You probably don't realize how much of your day is still being controlled by a version of you that's 7 years old. I know that sounds strange, but stay with me. That tightness in your chest when someone says, "We need to talk," that's not you being dramatic. That reflex to apologize when you've done nothing wrong? Not weakness. The way you can't sit still when everything's actually going well because it feels wrong, like you're waiting for disaster? Yeah, that's not anxiety randomly picking on you. It's something way more specific. And once you understand it, a lot of things that felt confusing about yourself will suddenly make sense. When you go through difficult things as a child, especially things that happen over and over, your brain doesn't just remember them. It rewires itself around them. And I'm not talking about sitting around thinking about the past. I'm talking about your actual nervous system learning lessons it was never supposed to learn. Lessons like, calm means danger is coming. Or, if I need something, I'll be abandoned. Or, I have to fix everyone else's emotions to be safe. These aren't thoughts you chose. They're survival instructions written into your body before you were old enough to have a say in it. Scientists have a term for what happens to kids who endure chaos, neglect, or harm without anyone stepping in to make it stop. They call it toxic stress. Normal stress is actually healthy. It teaches your system how to bounce back. But toxic stress is different. It's like a smoke alarm that goes off and never stops, flooding a small body with cortisol and adrenaline day after day with no relief. Harvard researchers studying early childhood development found that this doesn't just make kids feel bad in the moment. It actually changes the architecture of their developing brain, especially in areas responsible for regulating emotions, making decisions, and sensing danger. The parts that are supposed to help you feel safe never fully learn how, because they never got the chance to practice. Here's where it gets heartbreaking, and where this becomes so misunderstood. The child going through this has no idea any of this is happening. They just know the world feels unpredictable and scary. So they do what any smart, resourceful kid would do. They adapt. They figure out strategies to make things even slightly more bearable. And honestly, these strategies are brilliant given the circumstances. Maybe you learned to read every room you walked into, scanning faces and voices for the tiniest shift in mood that might signal danger. Maybe you became the peacemaker, the one who could feel tension building in adults before they even realized it themselves, and you jump in to smooth things over. Maybe you learned that the safest thing to do was become invisible, so quiet and small that no one would notice you at all. Some kids figure out that keeping others happy is the key to staying safe. So they get incredibly skilled at reading what everyone around them needs while completely losing touch with their own needs. For a child with no power, no choices, and no way out, these aren't bad strategies. They're genius. They work. They make an impossible situation slightly more survivable. The problem is what saves you as a kid can quietly destroy you as an adult. That constant scanning for danger becomes chronic anxiety where you can never fully relax, because some part of you still believes that letting your guard down for even a moment means something terrible will happen. The peacemaking becomes this exhausting need to manage everyone's emotions, fix every conflict, and make sure no one is ever upset, all while your own feelings get shoved down so deep you're not even sure what they are anymore. The invisibility becomes a kind of emotional numbness where you're disconnected from what you want, what you feel, who you even are underneath all the performance. And I want to be clear about something. This isn't about blaming anyone or putting labels on people. It's about understanding patterns that otherwise feel random and confusing. It's about making sense of why you react certain ways that don't seem to match the situation in front of you. Then there's the shame. And honestly, the shame might be the worst part of all of this. When you're little and bad things keep happening, your brain isn't developed enough to understand that it's not about you. Kids are egocentric by nature. That's just how their brains work at that developmental stage. Everything feels like it's about them. So when painful things keep happening, the child's brain draws a conclusion that makes sense to a kid but ruins everything later. They think they must be bad. They must deserve this somehow. If they were just better, smarter, quieter, more lovable, then maybe the bad things would stop. This becomes your core belief about yourself. Not, I did something bad, which is guilt and actually helps you learn and grow, but I am bad, which is shame, a feeling that attacks your entire sense of self. Guilt says you made a mistake and you can fix it. Shame says you are the mistake. That there's nothing to fix because the problem is you existing. That difference is everything. There's been extensive research on what they call adverse childhood experiences. The landmark study followed over 17,000 people and found undeniable patterns. People who experienced more difficult things as children were significantly more likely to struggle as adults, not just with mental health, but with physical health, relationships, financial stability, everything. Depression, anxiety, addiction, chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, all dramatically more common in people who had rough childhoods, even 30 or 40 years later. The body keeps the score, as they say. But here's what nobody tells you. This doesn't mean you're doomed. Sometimes people hear about this research and think their childhood already wrote their entire story and there's no point trying to change. That's not what this means. What it does is help explain why someone who went through a lot might struggle in ways that seem disproportionate to their current life. Your brain has this incredible ability called neuroplasticity, which means it can create new pathways and new patterns your entire life. Change is possible. It's just difficult, and it usually requires help from someone who understands trauma. The tricky thing is, none of this shows up in obvious ways most of the time. It's not dramatic. It shows up on a regular Tuesday afternoon. It's the way your entire body tenses when someone texts, "Can we talk?" Even though it's probably something completely mundane. It's how a small mistake at work sends you spiraling into thoughts that you're about to lose everything. It's that strange feeling of being unsafe when things are calm, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop because good things never last. It's how rest feels uncomfortable instead of refreshing, like you're not allowed to let your guard down. How compliments slide right off you, but criticism from weeks ago still plays on repeat in your mind. How you replay conversations over and over, analyzing every word you said, trying to figure out what you did wrong even when the other person has completely moved on. These reactions can look confusing or even irrational from the outside, and probably to you too. But they make perfect sense when you understand that your nervous system learned early on that small signs could mean big consequences. A slight change in someone's tone meant you needed to brace yourself. Silence meant something bad was brewing. A closed door meant you did something wrong. Your body learned to read these tiny signals as survival information. The problem is adult life rarely gives you such clear danger signals. Most of the time, a text saying, "We need to talk," really is about something boring like scheduling. Most of the time, someone being quiet just means they're tired. But your nervous system doesn't know that, so it fills in the gaps. It reacts to tone changes, silence, uncertainty, or mild conflict as if they're legitimate threats because once upon a time they were. And realizing that can be strange, even oddly relieving, because it means you're not broken or overreacting. It means your system learned something once and just hasn't received the update yet. Many people who had difficult childhoods spend their adult years unconsciously recreating what feels normal to them, even when it's painful. They might find themselves in relationships that feel unpredictable or chaotic because even though chaos hurts, it's familiar. Your nervous system finds this weird comfort in patterns it recognizes, even destructive ones, because at least you know what to expect. At least you know the rules of this game. Or they swing completely the other way and become controlling, unable to tolerate anything spontaneous or unplanned because unpredictability still registers as danger in their body. Then there's something called emotional flashbacks, and these are particularly confusing because they're different from regular memories. With a regular memory, you know you're remembering something from the past. But emotional flashbacks hit you with the feelings from a traumatic time without the actual memory attached. You're suddenly feeling small, powerless, terrified, or deeply ashamed for no reason you can identify in your present circumstances. There's no clear trigger you can point to, just this overwhelming sense that something is very wrong. And because you don't recognize it as a flashback, you start searching your current life for explanations, sometimes creating problems that don't actually exist just to make sense of these enormous feelings flooding your system. Getting better isn't a straight path and it's never easy. It takes genuinely hard work to notice these old survival patterns, understand where they came from and how they once protected you, and then consciously choose to respond differently over and over, even when everything in your body is screaming at you to do what's familiar. It means learning to actually believe that safety can be real, that people can be steady and trustworthy, that what you need matters, and that you deserve care and gentleness not because you earned it through perfect behavior, but simply because you exist. The kid who went through all of that didn't fail at anything. They survived using whatever tools they had, showing incredible resilience in dealing with things no child should ever have to face. But that kid deserves to finally rest now. They deserve to let the adult they've become take over the job of staying safe and making decisions. And doing that work, as hard and uncomfortable and slow as it is, might be some of the most difficult and most worthwhile work you ever do. Because you're not just healing the past. You're giving yourself permission to finally live in the present. If this made something click for you, if you felt seen in a way you haven't before, subscribe. We're building something here, breaking down human behavior in ways that actually make sense without the jargon or the judgment. Just real explanations for why we do what we do. You're not alone in this.